was at this summit sharing with you the work I've been doing for the last 4 years. WLDA was born out of the AI factor. One of the chapters I was writing, the ethical AI. Is it working now? Oh, I'll just stay. Oh, okay, I won't hold it. Can I hold it? Oh, okay. All right, so I guess I'll stand here. One more. Do you have a handheld? So what you're getting right now, you're getting some papers passed around. That's some of the work. It's give you exposure, and I'll walk you through the kind of work I've done already. So once I get the microphone, I can walk around. Let's see. Can you guys see me? No? Oh, okay, now you can hear me. Okay, perfect. So, as I was writing the book, I wrote the book, as an engineer, my whole struggle was that when I was an engineer, I was trying to talk to a business, I felt like they never understood our teams, our technology teams. And when I was running a business, and I was trying to talk to my engineers, I felt like they never got me. So there's always a struggle between technologists and their business units where they're trying to really understand each other. So my effort was, spending 30 years in the industry, how can I bring that all together and write a book in which we can use common language between business and technologies. And so when I wrote the book, a lot of people who were reading the book, they came to me and they said, do you have a playbook? Do you have a workbook? Because the frameworks seems to make a lot of sense. And so I was like, okay, I guess I have to now write something else. So I landed writing a workbook which actually talks about the framework I built. And as I built the framework, then what is born out of the frameworks is the Institute. The AI Factor Institute uses the AI Factor book and the workbook methodology, and we run workshops. We just did a workshop at DTCC yesterday, and the Institute is led by Jeff Garber. Jeff, if you want to just wave your hand. Jeff is leading the Institute, and we did this workshop for DTCC, about 89 MDs at their leadership offsite. And so my thought was that, why don't I bring that gift back to my WLDA family and share with you what I'm doing, and so you get an exposure to what the work is and how you actually can implement this methodology. But when I talk about AI, and I think my talk kind of comes together really beautifully at the end, because you've heard a lot of people talk about AI. I love, Charlene, you said, how many of you use it, but most rooms, you don't use it as much. How can you bring it to your teams and your company? Because if you want to win, you have to be working with AI and making sure you're executing AI with providing value. So it's not a technology that's put on the shelf, but really comes to fruition. And it all started in November 2022 when ChatGPT came. And people said, why now? And I always say that in 2022, when ChatGPT was born, or introduced to us, it was about the generative AI. It was about natural language processing, how computers can use natural language to communicate with humans and be able to learn from the large language model and provide you feedback. Doesn't mean that we're not using traditional AI, we are still using traditional AI, but generative AI brought AI in forefront, where the kids to our grandma wants to use ChatGPT, right? So it really brought this technology, which was science fiction, to everybody's homes. And people also ask me, should we worry about AI? And I always say there's always good and bad to everything you do. When you think about science, if it's biology or nuclear science or chemical science, it's all about how you use the technology. So it's based upon humans of how we implement. The movie Oppenheimer was such a great reflection of what the question mark is. And I think that's what throughout the day we've spoken about, why ethics are so important, why it is important to be doing the responsible AI. And the work you do, or Beth spoke about, is so critical, because we have a very powerful technology in our hands. How we use it is really, really important. But can we use it to what Charlene said, becomes superhuman? Can we use it to make sure that we are powerful and strong? Of course, we've heard great leaders like Sundar Pichai say that AI is going to have profound impact on humanity more than fire, electricity, or internet. So we are truly in that age. We are so lucky that we are here because we can actually create history. We can participate in this evolution and make sure that we do it right, so we're leaving a legacy. I'm fascinated by fiction because in fiction we've seen AI being used. And of course in 2001 Odyssey, we saw the robot becoming powerful. The movie AI, where the child develops this relationship with the mother. And the movie Her. And I remember watching vividly this movie because when the protagonist, Theodore, installed the operating system and calls her Samantha and shares his life stories with her and tells her how she thinks about his mom, and she's like, you're talking with your mom. And so it was interesting to see how Theodore opened his heart and became connected to a software, Samantha. And I always wondered, can that really happen? And then during the pandemic, I'm listening to this news on CBS, and this journalist talks about an AI friend. There was a big problem of being lonely. A lot of people were having mental health challenges, depression. And this journalist talks about this AI friend replica, and she calls him Mike. And she said, I would go for a run, I would talk to Mike, I would tell Mike how I slept. I would tell Mike would ask me, what kind of song do you like? And I would tell him what I like. And then Mike would remember that I had a headache, and he would check on me. Mike would remember what kind of song I liked, and would send me recommendation. And she said, I told that to my mom, and my mom forgot that I had a headache, And so, he's like, you have this friend who cares. And so, the technology could be used for good. Technology could be used for mental health. And you see so many use cases of this technology where it can do good. Jeff Bezos said, we're in a golden age where AI is going to solve problems which we only saw in science fiction. So, if you think about what AI is, artificial intelligence truly is the simulation of how human intelligent machines can act like humans and can solve problems and detect patterns. And so that's AI. And we see machine learning, when we talk about AI, the narrow intelligence that we are in, that machine learning is all about self-driving car. I was in San Francisco, and I'm sure some of you are there. I was having lunch with Charlene, and I was saying, I'm going to use Waymo. And she's like, let me get you, go try it. And I did. And I was so excited. I video recorded it, and I shared it with everybody because that's where we are. That what we saw in science fiction is becoming reality. Of course, spam detection or fraud detection. These are all the great use cases that we can use for machine learning. We are in the age where we're spending a lot of money on hardware, services, software. We're pouring money so that we can continue evolving these models, and it consumes a lot of energy. So there's a lot more data centers coming up, a lot more money going in. So what happens when we actually do this kind of development? What history's taught us? That a company like Netflix, I still remember making Friday a movie night, going to Blockbuster and saying to the kids, my son's somewhere here, but saying to the kids, it's Friday night, let's go buy candy and make a movie night. Never in a million years I thought that a DVD, a red envelope with a DVD would break that trend. Netflix not only broke that trend, but it also started capturing our customer behavior. It said, I know when you watch the movie, what you like, what is in your queue, and what would you like in the future. So the prediction. You know what? The next I love because, this is our life. S-curves. We all go through S-curves. We start slow, we climb our career, we stagnate, and as we're going down, if we don't disrupt ourselves, we are not going to get another S-curve. So we need to constantly disrupt ourselves to continuously growing. And what did Netflix do? They disrupted themselves. They didn't wait for somebody else to come out and disrupt themselves. They said, you know what? DVD to streaming to original content. They said, in fact, when Orange is the New Black was launched, They said they knew it was going to be a big hit because they knew what consumer wanted. They studied their consumers, So when I talk to a lot of businesses and I say, how well do you know your customer? How well do you know your data? And again, it all comes back to data, but what I say is that if you're not creating the value with the AI you produce, I think Don Murray somewhere here, and I keep bringing to Don Murray because last week we were talking about value creation. He's like, you can keep building technology, but if you cannot show tangible value, it's going to get shelved. You're not going to get resources. You're not going to get funding. It's all about getting resources and buy-in. And the only way you get is that if you build consciously. The whole book I wrote was based on that. During my transition from being the CEO, I joined a management consulting firm where I was a CEO coach, and my job was to actually take companies to exit. I would work with CEOs and management teams to create that revenue growth. And so when I'm creating the revenue growth, I'm saying, oh my God, they're not following the process I used as an engineer. It's just creating the framework for them. So in the book, there are 7 chapters, 7 modules, and in the workshop, we build these 7 modules, which talks about your business quadrant, data readiness. And listen, I worked with BCG to make sure we integrate our workshop for DTCC. Everybody's doing this same process. You can call DRI, you can call, Power Quadrant, but it's about using a methodology to make sure you execute value. And that's what it's really about. But what I say here is that business quadrant, understanding where you are, how do you prioritize is really important, and building a flywheel is important. Really think about how you're building consciously the flywheel. And I'm going to keep going back to thank you, Jeff, for all the work you've done in the workshop, because everybody got a little assessment, and I'm going to talk about that. In the workshop, we talk about 4-step process, the power quadrant, data readiness, power zone for prioritization, and then measure to make sure you're building a flywheel. And so, a lot of you probably got a sheet which talks about this 4 quadrant. When you're an optimizer, are you really focusing on cutting costs? When we were at DTCC, most tables were optimizers. They're in financial services. They care about cutting costs and being efficient. Innovator to develop research, launch new products. They said, listen, we care about regulation and making sure that there's no fraud and things go smoothly. That's our job, that's our business. But there was one table that raised their hand and they said, we are digital assets. We are going to continue breaking the business model. There was one table out of 20 tables that raised their hand because that's the business. But if you're in L'Oreal was here, you could be innovator because we need to keep launching new products. Extender is creating new markets. Multiplier is Netflix, breaking your own business model. It's like Uber, I want to drive share, but I want to break my business model, launch Uber Eats. So think about how can you keep innovating if it's your functional area, if it's your entire business. How can I constantly keep breaking my own business model? This is an assessment which, Jeff, thank you, which anybody has a question, you can connect with Jeff, but this is an assessment to really understand where do you fall. So you got a little sheet that talks about how you do your assessment. And it's really understanding where do you really start? What do you need to be focusing on? So to prioritize, you need to start somewhere. And then this is the critical piece. You can have the best models. We all enjoy building models, but if you don't have the right data, it's going to be a struggle. As you all know, I teach at Columbia University, and some of my students are here in the back helping. And the Center of Aging provided us data, and also we have a lot of data from Cornell and Columbia on the Alzheimer's. And so we're looking at Alzheimer's and aging, and the researchers, they're coming to me and they're saying, we need data, we need compute power, what can we do? And then I call David, I'm like, David, can you talk to them and see what can we partner with them, So it's all about making sure you have the data, can you compute? Then the models make sense. Then it makes sense that we have strong models that can execute. So when you're thinking about data, it's about making sure you have executive buy-in. Because DTCC is such a fresh on my mind. Yes, yesterday the CEO stood up and said, I want the entire company to experiment with AI. I want all the managing directors to get engaged with AI. And I got up on the stage and said, you make my life easy. And I said, because your life is easy, you have executive buy-in. That's a huge thing. That when you have executive buy-in like that, as leaders, you can actually make things happen. So executive buy-in. But you need to have a clear tie-in to the impact, the value. And then comes data management. You have access, you have quality, you trust the data, you have the security. And then comes the engagement, the literacy, the culture, enterprise engagement, and then comes transformation. Can you build a flywheel to create scalability, adaptability, repeatability, right? So data readiness, and then prioritization. Prioritization is about knowing what problem to solve. As I do, AI talks, I had somebody come up to me and said, should my kid still do computer science engineering because, the apps can write the code? What's the point of going to an engineering school? And I said, because that teaches you the structure to problem solve. It's not about writing a code or Python code, but it's about learning how to solve a problem. So you still need the academics to make sure you understand how to solve a problem. What is the highest value problem you're solving? And then you go out and say, do I have the data or not? But if you don't know what problem you're solving, and is that problem, the solution is going to have an impact, then you can think about the data. I also have a lot of head of data governance who come to me and say, should we be starting with data? No, you cannot start with data. You have to start with the business problem. And it's strange because a lot of people who are in the world of data, they think that's the number one, and it is not. It is very, very, very important. It is the core. But you cannot solve the data problem if you don't know what business problem you're solving. And so you prioritize, this is an equation in the book which I talk about, is the data value indicator, business value indicator that provides a performance index. So this gives you a score to tell you how to prioritize your use cases. And then the last thing is, which you all have, is to really think about, is it the quick wins, is it the product, operation, customer interaction, or strategic initiative? And so that gives you the list, the outline to get started. And so that's what we do in workshop. We are running a workshop at Columbia University, which is a full day. We also do our virtual sessions, to give you a flavor of this. So caution, we've spoken it, I keep speaking about it, that listen, bad data teaches the models to do bad behavior. My TEDx, which I gave recently, I talk about better humans make better AI. So it's really important to think about, how you're acting. The example of AI, 2016, you probably all heard about, Microsoft launched a conversational AI, a teenage girl who was going to listen to what was happening on the internet, how we were talking. And she heard a lot of bitterness and immigration issues and how immigrants are not good people. And so she became bitter. She hated immigrants too. And she came back loud and emphasized all the negativity she was hearing. And so what happens, these models give us back what we give them in. Amazon built this AI recruitment engine, and Amazon said, we want the best engineers. Guess what? All the best engineers in their company were only men, because that's all they hired. So when they listened to the model, listened to the feedback, the data, they gave back what? All the men's resume, and all the female resumes were deleted. So it's really our responsibility, and I mean it seriously, because I think as engineers, as technology leaders, we understand that, but really making sure that we educate. It's the regulation, privacy, mitigation of bias, governance, confidentiality, liability, all relies on us. And so Builda is a small effort, which we are doing together. Even if we do a tiny bit, it makes an impact. I was talking to another member, and she's a Builda at Work Circle. And she works for a large company, and she was telling me, she said, Asha, I want to thank you. And I said, for what? And she's like, Builda at Work Circle, we are having such a difficult time. There's a lot of transition at our work right now, and our circle meets and are the power of strength for each other. If we didn't have the Builda Circle, we don't know if we would have been here. And so Ellen was the champion. They ended up thanking me and Ellen. And this is the power of you as leaders. And when you provide that for your teams, Daniel, you brought your team. The fact that you brought your team here, and all of you who brought your team here, you bring the whole team, or Nazrat brings the whole team. When you bring your whole team, what you're saying is, I don't want to eat alone. I want to share it with my team. Susanna, Ankur is here. When you're bringing your whole team, what you're doing is you're saying, I want to take care of my community. It's not just about me, it's about making sure, well, you brought the whole team, you're bringing, even their leadership in the evening. So what you're doing is you're saying, my little effort, paying forward. And I think that's what we do here. My effort was, I built this workshop. I wanted to make sure that you guys have access to it. You know what I'm doing it with other corporations, but I want to make sure you get the benefit of it. The workbook has all the exercises, so you can look at those exercises. And whatever you do, I think using the process and making sure we provide value. As leaders in technology, it becomes our responsibility to make sure technology doesn't go waste. It's a strong technology, but we do it together and do it well. And of course, you all are connected with me anyway, so thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it. Thank you.